I'm Alan Krutsch, the Director of Industry Relations for Fuse-Autotech. With me today is Eric Trytko, who is our Community and Social Media Manager. And Eric, welcome home. I know
Thank you.
You've been in Vietnam for what, a little better than a week?
Yeah, right at a week. Yeah, it was. Well, although if you go into international date going forward and backward, who knows?
There may be a missing day in your
Something like
life
that.
somewhere there.
So.
Start us off and tell us how this came about. You were asked to travel with other people from the automotive press to visit a company I'm not sure a lot of people have heard about, VinFast. Tell us how this came about.
So my previous life, current life, whatever, I'm a member of a number of automotive media groups. One of the ones local here in Detroit is called the Automotive Press Association. They typically do a monthly meeting where someone comes in and talks, sometimes live, sometimes virtually. In this case, it was a virtual one because it was by a company called VinFast, which is a new automotive manufacturer based out of Vietnam. They've been in business for a couple of years, but outside of Vietnam, no one's heard of them. After the webinar, I got an email kind of out of the blue saying, "Hey, we saw you were in there. Looked like you had some questions. Are you interested in coming to Vietnam and seeing this in person?" At which point I went to my wife and I said, "Look, I don't care what we have booked here. I want to go." And she said, "Well, we don't have anything booked, anything going on. So, go for it." So yeah, literally got asked by their PR agency to come over there. It was myself. This was the second one they had done. They had done one in April, I believe, and right after the New York Auto Show, where they did a bit of a debut there as well. There were about 35 or 40 journalists. I would say 2/3 from the U.S., the rest from Canada. There were a number of influencers. There were some partners of VinFast, whether they're suppliers or whatever, and then a number of people who had signed up to be like the first people to ever buy that. And there was a cool story in there as well. So we had a charter plane of about 185 to 200 people on this flight from San Francisco over to Vietnam.
Well, this is fascinating to me, and I know we're going to get into some of the details of your trip, but here at the top of the broadcast, can you just break down for us in summary form, who is VinFast? What are they trying to do? Are we going to see their vehicles in America?
Sure. The broad company, or the main company, is called VinGroup. Primarily, they are a real estate company now. The founder started off doing other things. He packaged foods in the Ukraine, of all things. I know, it's how do we get there from here?
Usually that's one of those only in America stories, but it sounds like this is only in Vietnam or only in the Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. So late 90s, early 2000s, I guess he came back home to Vietnam, got involved in some real estate development, and what they've done is they've done malls and, for the lack of a better term, small cities, and they're doing private hospitals. They've created a university. I mean, they're just this huge conglomerate company. They're doing a bunch of stuff in tech, and a bunch of it's enormous. It's one of the stat they threw at us is VinGroup as a company is about 2.1 to 2.2% of Vietnam's entire GDP.
Well, I know it's a small country, but that's still an impressive number. It's a little bit reminiscent of some of these other conglomerates. Tata in India comes to mind, cars, consulting, agriculture, etc. So they're in the car business.
Yeah,
say more about that.
About 5 or 6 years ago, I guess they approached some partners. Vietnam has a tax, an enormous tax if you want to import a vehicle. So there are a number of companies that are building vehicles there. They began to license the cars. One was from BMW, and then another one, they said who it was, but didn't really say who it was. But right now they're producing three traditional ICE vehicles. One's what they call the President, which I believe is the BMW 2 Series, an older version of the BMW 2 Series, and then a couple small hatchbacks. And on top of that, they also produce a bunch of scooters too, which which in Vietnam everyone has a scooter, and not just one, usually two or three. But at some point they decided that yeah, these ICE vehicles are cool, but EVs are the future. And in a country of 100 million people where you have a lot of overcrowding in the cities, it makes a lot of sense.
Eric, will you say that again?
Sure.
100 million people?
Yeah, Vietnam has 100 million people in the country.
I was not aware of that. I mean, the land mass is what? It's like Texas or Southern California?
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know the exact, but I want to say sort of like Washington to California, sort of like the West Coast of the United States. If you take those three states,
okay.
about that, yes.
And 100 million people. It's a larger market than I thought it was.
Yeah, like Hanoi itself has, I believe, 9.5 million people.
Wow.
Ho Chi Minh City is about 12.5 to 13 million. Hue, I think, is a million and a half. I can't remember. There's a number of larger metropolitan areas in there, and that's kind of one of the things that going back to what you talked about earlier with VinGroup and creating these little micro cities, the government is encouraging people to move out of the cities because of overcrowding and the amount of resources available, and VinGroup is creating these little micro cities where there's like 28 to 30 or 20 to 30 30-story tower apartment building towers, which are what we call middle class style. And in these complexes, there's there's a mall, there's lakes, there's sort of resort style villas. I mean, it's crazy. And it's not just in one place, it's in multiple places across there. Anyway, so sorry, I got off on a tangent there. So VinFast decided to move to EVs. They've contracted with Pininfarina for some design work. They're creating their own platforms, although heavily influenced by some other people. Again, a lot of EVs, you can source parts from the same places. They've created a brand new factory with state-of-the-art equipment, most of it German. And it's quite the thing. And yeah, they've got 2 EV vehicles going on the production line right now and a third to come soon. Vehicles will be on sale in the United States theoretically right now, but there's a couple of things with EPA, not the EPA, but just basically it's the EPA getting them in, and they're in small groups with some first ones. But basically by fourth quarter, they're trying to have the vehicles for sale here directly.
Wow. And so I think we could let's come back to how they're going to sell them, what their model is and stuff.
Sure.
I'd like to learn more about your experience in Vietnam. So, my mental picture of Vietnam is kind of old. It's Vietnam War era, and obviously it's a much different country now. But how are the people? How is the countryside? What did you observe, just as a visitor, not necessarily a journalist going to an automobile plant?
So the people are wonderful. Everyone seemed to be very nice. Granted, we got a bit of a curated view of it, but I had a chance to just the one sort of day and a quarter we had in Hanoi, I snuck out once in the afternoon and then the next morning for a morning walk just to see for myself, so I could get a bit of an uncurated view. And everyone was just going about their business, and no one looked at me as like, who's this weird looking white guy walking around in here? It was just like, okay, Hanoi is diverse enough that it's not unusual to see tourists in there, Western looking tourists through there. But yeah, everyone seemed to be very nice. There's like once or twice got kind of weird views or just wasn't sure, but you're going to get that anywhere. As far as the city, the old quarter of Hanoi has to be seen. It's quite the place. It's somewhat preserved in time, which is cool. There's other parts of the city where you can literally sing it being transformed, where it looks like a lot of the stuff is left over from the 40s, 50s, 60s.
And so you can still see some of the colonial French influence.
Not only that, but then some of the buildings that were built and that look just sort of, for the lack of a better term, cliche Asian metropolitan. Here's this little shop right in the front and everyone lives behind and it's 7 stories high,
Sure.
and all kinds of signs all over. That's very prevalent there. But at the same time, you see that being transformed into a lot of newer buildings and a lot of just things being, I don't want to say cleaned up, but just gentrified, really, is probably the best way to say it. And I think the best way to describe it is, if you ever, there was a time lapse that I remember seeing of Dubai, and it sort of took Dubai from like the 1990s and then all the way up through whatever 2018, 2019 at that point. And you can literally see in this time lapse, it just from like, looks like, Vegas in 1947, where it's barely more than a paved road and nothing along the side, what it is today. And it's not exactly that, but it's sort of got that vibe where it's just transforming day by day, and everything happens there very quickly. Just one building was up, and I swear we went in one day, and like 2 days later when we left, it was completely bricked. Like, it's just like
just before your very eyes, you said.
Don't blink, it'll change.
So I'm assuming that you got to visit a factory, or a lot of the Asian manufacturers, that's almost a compound. There's living quarters near there. What was visiting the VinFast factory like? What was your first impression?
It's very Western. It's a campus, but there were no living quarters there. What you did see is a parking lot of about 9,000 scooters there of everyone coming in there. And I'm not joking when I say that. The crazy thing is this, again, talking about speed, this factory was essentially, it went from, it's like a swampland / rice paddy to fully functioning and putting on vehicles in 21 months.
That just seems astounding to me, the ingenuity and kind of the push for progress. And this ties into the way the city is transforming also. The I don't know a better word for it, the ambition to create something.
Yeah, if you've been in a modern automotive manufacturing plant, it looks similar in the sense of, it looks like, a giant steel pole barn in a lot of ways. But it's all modern machinery, modern manufacturing. I will say some of the health and safety regulations are nowhere near as tight as what you see in the United States or Canada, in the sense of we didn't have to have, like steel-toed shoes and hard hats and safety vests. And we were able to get a lot closer to the equipment than probably we would normally see here in North America. But that said, that's fine. But no, it was, everything there was clean. The work when we're going through the assembly line area, the workers were getting on their lunch break, and they're just chatting and happy, and couldn't be nicer, and we're waving at us and like, hey, look at the tourists. But they seem to be proud of what they're doing. So we walked through the scooter assembly line, same thing. No one really thought too much of us being there. It was like, hey, how you doing? Kind of a, obviously they didn't say, hey, how you doing, but kind of that universal, oh, hey, how's it going? It was multiple buildings. It's set up a little differently than I think normally we'd see in a North American production line, but it's fine. There's more than one way to rock, kind of thing.
Did they tell you what their capacity in that plant is?
For cars, something approaching 250,000. Yeah.
I think that's kind of standard. The world around is a factory unit is about 250,000 production. Yep. And did you, I know this is very early in their manufacturing development stage. Did they have vehicles that you could sit in, that you could drive? Were you able to experience the vehicle?
Yeah, so the 3-row crossover, which is the VF9, we did not get to drive. They had a sort of late engineering sample there that was, pretty close, but we did get to drive a pre-production VF8, which is their 2-row crossover. So if you want to think sort of RAV4, CRV, Ford
Escape.
Escape, thank you. Yeah, that size vehicle, bigger size 2-row crossover vehicle.
Right.
And in general, it was a solid effort. It's a pre-production car, so it had some calibration that probably needed a little work. But the one thing I can say is not myself and pretty much everyone's had kind of the same feedback, and the engineers were there taking a lot of notes and taking photos. And if we pointed out something in sort of like a build quality issue, or hey, that's not going to work here in North America because and they were taking pictures and writing notes. So they're really open to feedback. It drove fine. The interior quality is probably spot on line with the category. I would say it's maybe not quite Acura RDX level, but nicer than a Volkswagen, somewhere between a Volkswagen and an Acura. So take that for what you they have the big touch screen, which is gonna have all your controls. I will say it's really responsive. It's not my preferred way of how to deal with controls in a car for a lot of reasons, mostly personal. But
well, you've been
it works
driving
well.
cars with speedometers and toggle switches too long, I think. You're used to that.
Well, there's that, but I think it's not only that, but it's more intuitive. And anytime you have to look away from the road to kind of figure out where your finger's touching as you're bouncing down the road, it's a distraction. To their credit, while there is no speedometer in front of you, it's a clean dash. They do have a heads-up display, so you're not constantly looking over like you do in a Model 3 or a Model Y, like how fast am I going? No, there's a heads-up display. It's clean, it's clear. You have a choice of 3 different colors, so whatever you prefer. But we, very smooth road, so it's hard to say. But Road Knife seemed to be a very solid effort.
They talk about U.S. prices at all?
Somewhere around $44,000 is what they're shooting for. Now they have a interesting sales model in that you're going to buy the car but lease the battery. We had the opportunity to talk to Madam Tui, their global CEO for VinFast. A lot of questions, pretty much from everyone. I don't think they quite understand the marketing or how they're going to market that to the U.S. I think it's a cultural thing, and I mean that kind of in the best kind of way. In Asia, everything is usually about the lowest price you can get. Here, it's the sort of like the lowest price is great, but what else are you going to cost me? So they came up on well, if everyone's going to lease the vehicle, not buy the vehicle, why do I need to lease a vehicle and then lease a battery? Why aren't we just including it all in one? That's one of the things as they come to market that they're open to talking about and changing and working with some people to find a easier solution for consumers to understand.
Well, it sounds like they're addressing what is, I'll call it a customer concern of what happens to my vehicle, the value of my vehicle when the battery runs out. So whether it's leased, included initially, they're implying that battery is replaceable and maybe replaceable fairly easily. And so, that's interesting that they're addressing that, but it sounds like there's more to come there. An ambitious country or company rather, and an interesting entry into a very competitive segment. What did they reveal about their method of retail? Are they, like most EVs, going direct to consumer? Are they partnering with dealers? What's their approach to the U.S. market?
Initially, it's going to be direct to consumer in as many states as they can do direct to consumer. And this is specifically a question I asked during the press conference. What they said is that in states that they cannot sell directly because of dealer franchise laws, they are open to working with partners. So I took that as, specific dealer groups or finding some kind of partnership. I think they have a good understanding of, what the retail environment in the United States is. And sure, we're seeing like even the Detroit 3 talking about doing direct sales and trying to do interesting things. And I think they're, taking a bit of a cue from that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because our legacy manufacturers in the US, of course, have a very mature built out dealer network. And it'll be interesting to see if a company like VinFast can get a toehold, because when you're going it alone, that's a very expensive piece of infrastructure to stand up, as well as a very expensive piece of the business to run. And, one could even imagine a company like VinFast that says, we have to move more quickly, and to get distribution, there are dealers on every corner in every town that might be willing to buy our cars and build a building or put us into an existing building. So be interesting to see what a brand new company like this coming from Southeast Asia would see. So you said that you thought we could see cars in America in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think by mid to late fourth quarter we'll see the vehicle. They have 6 stores that are open. They've delivered a few vehicles to some of their first customers. Some of their first customers are expecting delivery, kind of September, October timeframe. So, yeah, I think very, very much by fourth quarter.
Where are the stores that they've opened?
Currently, just in California. They have 6 stores in Southern California right now that they're opening. So, interesting story related to that. They're one of the first buyers was on this trip. He's from San Diego, and he bought the sight unseen. He's Vietnamese, very involved in the Vietnamese community. And so he was really excited about this opportunity, and he got a chance to get behind the wheel after the New York Auto Show when they did some stuff right around New York. He was so excited that he started talking to a bunch of people in the community and got VinFast to order like 90 vehicles for him so he could basically get his friends involved. After that, he's trying to get VinFast to sell him 200 more vehicles.
So he's an early evangelist, clearly some national pride in his home country, and he's spreading the word throughout his community. That there's, I don't know the history, but there's got to be a Henry Ford story like this somewhere too, of the first people to buy those cars and to spread the word like that. That's an interesting approach or an interesting facet of this story, because there is in many communities in America, there is sizable Vietnamese population who have come to America, many of them right after the war, and a lot of great Vietnamese entrepreneurs, successful small businesses. Be interesting to see how they become involved in this brand, either as consumers or possible partners, certainly as evangelists.
Yep.
So, yeah, very
I'm sorry. A side note that was really a cool experience in here, and I was trying to find the gentleman's name, and I couldn't find it quite on the page. I can't pull it quickly, but anyways. The Vietnamese photographer who took the sort of famous Napalm Girl photo, got to meet him. Yes, he was there.
Wow.
Older gentleman now. He's probably in his early 80s. Didn't speak a lot of English, but very nice man. He always had a Leica around his neck. So that's how I kind of struck up a conversation with him. Being a bit of not quite a camera nerd, but enjoying cameras.
It's always good practice to follow the guy with the Leica.
Yeah, exactly. Really nice guy. They even called him out a few times because he's a bit of a national treasure, obviously in Vietnam, and kind of said, we're very honored to have him here. And yeah, I thought that was cool. Just kind of the weirdest coincidences you come across in life. Like, really, I got to meet that guy. I didn't take the selfie with him because that was a little self-absorbed, but
Right. We're tempted.
Yeah, I was tempted. Honestly
take a selfie with his Leica. That's what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
To do.
Exactly.
Well, Eric, I know that you're writing an article that I think we've just posted on the blog, and you're going to be doing a few other features. But As we wrap up, give me your thoughts. You've been covering automotive out of Detroit for a long time, and in business in general, you know, it's happened frequently where an established industry finds that their competitors come from a direction nobody anticipated. And I think over the last 3 or 4 years, as Tesla has kind of plowed the ground for EVs, and the Americans and established Asian companies have made commitments to EVs, I don't think anybody was saying, hey, watch out for Vietnam.
Yeah.
After your trip there, after learning more about this company, what do you think? Do I have a chance?
I do. The title of the article that I wrote for our blog is called Speed, Scale, and Intent. And that's really the thing that I took away from the company, the main company, VinFast as a company, and the country itself. They're moving with speed, they're moving with scale, they're very much moving with intent. One of the philosophies at VinFast they talked about was, we make decisions in 5 minutes rather than 5 months, because we're going to come to the same conclusion anyway. And if we make a mistake, we're still way ahead of the game, because we're going to be able to fix that mistake, move on, and have learned something from that mistake. So yeah, I think there's, is it going to be an overall dominant? And you don't know. But it's certainly, it's there. It's there, and it's going to be an interesting story to follow, because execution is everything. They seem to be able, everything is there for them to do it, but they actually have to do it. And doing it in the United States, North America, and in Europe, where they have the same ambitions as they do here, it's a different market and a different set of expectations. So that's what's going to be. Can they meet those, what we consider just, well, that's exactly what, table stakes. Will they be able to do that? I don't know quite yet. I think they can, but it's we'll see.
Well, it has been fascinating to learn about this trip. I'm envious of you. I know there's lots more to the story. You can see the first installment at Fuse-Autotech.com under the resource section. It's called Speed, Scale, Intent, and it is Eric's travelogue and vehicle review. As I said, more to come. Eric, thank you so much for your time today.
Alan, thank you. I appreciate it.